We are gonna get started. So this is our webinar on how to manage AI risk across design, construction, and real estate. There has been so many questions that we've gotten about the risk of AI, not just like what tools to use, how to use it, but what are the risks of putting data into it, getting reliable data out of it, like how can we stay protected? This is the second installment of our Catching Up to AI webinar series. And we're going to be doing this on a monthly basis, talking about different topics all around AI. So this is our risk portion. Coming up, we'll have more to talk about AI applications within design, business development. We're going to try to touch all the different facets. So first, I want to do some quick introductions. And just to address all the questions that you guys have asked us over the months, I took the liberty of inviting two experts on the risk and legal side for AI. So first, I want to introduce you guys to Marcial Velez. He's the founder and CEO of Expert Tech's computer consultancy. They're a nationally recognized managed services firm based in New York. They are, and many of you guys may not know what this list is, but there's a major list that tracks all the managed service providers in North America. They're one of the top 500 managed service providers in North America and the top 500 most innovative globally in the world. And Marcel is a frequent speaker and contributor on cybersecurity, AI, and adoption. And he spends a lot of his time just helping companies secure and manage the technology environments that they need to run their businesses. Um, Marcel, did I get everything right?
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. No, yeah, I've been doing this for this is going to be our 25th year as a managed IT service provider, and we've been helping small and mid-sized businesses sort of navigate through all the different technologies that are coming about. And now with AI, I mean, we have an incredible accelerator. I mean, this is something that's going to be able to improve productivity, surface insights, get faster teams to move at a pace that we haven't seen before. But like any powerful technology, it needs the right guardrails. So I'm excited to really sit here and talk about this and have this incredible conversation. Um, as a managed IT service provider, uh, I'm blessed with the perspective of working with different firms that are design firms, real estate firms across. So as I talk with leadership teams that are asking me about the difference risks. This is a common conversation that we're having right now and a very relevant conversation.
Awesome. And so our second panelist is, and thank you, Marcial, for having this. We had a personal conversation about AI, so I was like, man, look, we should literally just have this publicly. So thanks for joining us. Um, our second panelist is Richard Davies. So Rich and I are, good friend of mine. We actually served together on the Design Philadelphia board, and he's also a member of the Philadelphia AIA board, but he's a partner at MMP&S. They're a nationally recognized law firm that focuses heavily on defending architects, engineers, and other design professionals. He's been representing architects and engineers for decades on professional liability, contracts, and all sorts of risk management issues. They Rich spends most of his career defending architects and engineers when things go wrong on projects. And Rich is one of those rare humans that outside of everything he does as a lawyer, he cares so much about the design profession. Recently he received a honorary AIA designation, which is one of the highest honors that the AIA can give to a non-architect for their contributions to the profession. So thank you, Rich, for being here and being able to share your insights.
I'm happy here to help my people. As I was noting, to Marcial and Uchenna a few moments ago. Interestingly enough, some of the chatter, the concerns, and the issues raised, and some of the questions that have been raised already, and I know we'll cover today, were raised at the beginning of the use of building information modeling. And for those of you old enough to remember its generation and its impact upon the community at the start, you will recognize in the questions and concerns being raised now in AI, some of the same questions and concerns raised when BIM was created. But we all know now how much BIM has been folded into our lives. Design professionals simply take it for granted. And all the trepidation, the anxiety, the questions raised about its use are long in our rearview mirrors. And for those of you who didn't grow up during the beginning of, who weren't practicing during the beginning of BIM, you would think that those questions and anxieties were just silly. And I'm hoping that in an even shorter period of time, a lot of the questions, concerns about AI will fall back into our rearview mirror as we become comfortable with it and incorporate it into our practice.
Awesome. Um, so so we have poll questions, but I'm actually going to wait till later in this discussion to do a few poll questions. But first, I just want to start with a quick icebreaker for the both of you guys. What do you got? Do you have any fun vacation plans for this summer, especially after this brutal winter that we just had?
I'm trying to get to Puerto Rico. Uh, I mean, yeah, if I can get to Puerto Rico this summer, it would be amazing. I do have family out there, and it's always an amazing time. And oh my God, the food is amazing. So,
Awesome.
My vacation, like many vacations for the past several years, will be taking at least one of my children to yet another educational institution to continue that education. Those of you who work in Philadelphia and know me know I have four children, three of whom are triplets. And two of those four are still in the graduate school process. And I will be taking one to begin her MD, PhD program this summer. And that will involve me once again packing all of her crap into a space that's too small, hauling it up someplace, and carrying it and lifting it into place. So it's my Groundhog Day of
oh man,
vacation.
That's
that sounds
funny.
like a blast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my family and I we're planning to we're planning a road trip up to Lake George. So I'm in outside of Philadelphia, so we're gonna drive. I think it's 3 hours up to Lake George to just hang out and chill. So that is our plan. So
Beautiful up
all right.
there. It's beautiful up there. Take the lake. What is it? The mini haha is up there. Yeah, it's
Oh
very beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's get right into it. My first question is for Marcial. So one of the biggest questions that I think a lot of people have or wondering about is, obviously we all want to use AI, some type of chatbot to do all of our work. And that AI works best when we can feed it more accurate information. So the first question is, is it safe to put project or client data into some type of AI tool so that we can do our work or whatever. I think a lot of the concern is what's going to happen to that data? Is it am I releasing competitive information or intellectual property or making it available to someone else on the internet by uploading it to some type of platform?
So I would say that my short answer would be it really depends on the tool and how mature it is from an enterprise security standpoint. I think one of the biggest mistakes that organizations make right now is that they treat all AI tools the same, and they are not the same. There's a major difference between public AI tools and enterprise AI platforms. Public AI tools are typically designed for like broader consumer use. In many cases, data is entered into those systems and may used to improve like the model or retained in ways that organizations cannot fully control. So enterprise AI platforms are different because they're more mature. You can have enterprise controls. There's things like you can do like data isolation, encryption, access controls, audit logs, policies that make sure that the data that you have is not being used to train public models. So I would say that before putting any client or project data into an AI system, you first got to understand like what that flow of that data is. You got to understand where it's flowing from, who has access to it, is it being used for training? Is there any like type of tenant isolation that's there? I mean, if those questions cannot be clearly answered, then that tool is not really ready for any sensitive business data. I think the mindset that you have to have is you have to encourage everyone to start adopting this, and you got to treat AI tools the same way that you would treat it any other critical vendor that you put into your infrastructure. I mean, it means that security and review, governance, and clear policies on what data can and cannot be used has to be defined. And if AI can't absolutely be used safely inside organizations, um, but only really when the right controls and guardrails are in place. That's the only way that you can really use AI when it's super safe in an organization.
So just to clarify, like let's say I have a pro account of ChatGPT, right?
Mhm.
Which I think in the pro account there's some protections or there's some I never read the contracts when sign up for these tools. I should. I know. Rich is like shaking his head. But let's say I have a pro account for ChatGPT. Can I take, let's say this RFP or something that came from the client and drop it in there? Like, does OpenAI or Anthropic, do they provide like basic protections for a simple person like me?
No, this is what I was saying. The difference between that's a public AI tool, and it's really meant for consumer use. So what I would do is, yeah, it's a great tool for, if it wants to help you kind of, set up emails or do, or if you want to do any type of mind strategic kind of thing where you're kind of talking to it by not putting any sensitive data. But if I were going to put RFPs or things that with sensitive data, no, I wouldn't use ChatGPT. I would use something like a Microsoft Copilot and make sure that you have data retention and data policies that are set there and it stays with inside your Microsoft tenant. So you're not adding to the public domain. The problem is with ChatGPT is that you're going to put that kind of data out there and it's a public tool right now. So you should not be using that and put any sensitive data into any type of, even though they'll tell you, oh, there's options that you can do to say you can, they don't train the data. It's not meant to do that. There's not the controls that you have in place, the same controls that you have with a Microsoft Copilot, which, by the way, is Microsoft has a major stake in OpenAI. So when you're using chat, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot are pretty much the same, except for the fact that Microsoft has a lot more security tools around it.
Got it. Okay. So if an organization wants to sort of better protect themselves, maybe they should establish something within Microsoft Copilot, which is almost like the same as ChatGPT because of their relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you set up Copilot, it really is. It looks exactly the same. It uses the same language model that you can get with OpenAI, and now it's inside the organization's company tenant. So that information, any private, like that's where you could start putting RFPs, documents, and share it, and start looking at it for who has permission to what, and you could start to control that data.
Awesome. Now, Rich, let's say I run a firm of 50 people, a mid-sized firm, and I have a few architects and project managers who are consistently busy. But let's say they put like sensitive client information into an AI system. Does this create any new legal exposure that, as an owner or manager that they should be aware of?
Of course, for the reasons Marcial just mentioned. I mean, um, imagine managing one vault. It's your own vault at home and making sure that it's locked and the secure information doesn't escape it. The minute you start using these open systems, you're putting that information in someone else's vault. And you don't know how well they're locking it up and how secure it happens to be. You're just now compounding the risk of that information getting outside of your and your client's control. And let's step back for a second. Before AI, clients, especially institutional clients, included in their agreements with their various project participants, particularly architects, confidentiality provisions, which placed a limit on the information that could be disclosed and how it could be disclosed regarding that project. All right. Those existed before AI. They're going to continue to exist beyond AI and are probably going to be tightened up. And we're already starting to see evidence of that by adding additional limitations. For example, some clients now want to know if you're going to be using AI. And if you are, whose tools you're going to be using. And they're going to dovetail their limitations on those uses with their general confidentiality requirement. So if you're compounding the risk of losing the information, you're obviously, with the use of AI and open systems, compounding your legal exposure and risk, your exposure to breaching that confidentiality provision. Even if there weren't a confidentiality provision, look, before this AI moment, I think most clients, with the exception of the more sophisticated institutional clients, universities and certain corporations, really didn't know how you made the sausage. They didn't know how you got to that design. They didn't know what resources you were using. And it sort of didn't matter because all those resources were, for the most part, internal. Okay. Um, they now know that there's another means by which you can generate information from their information and that it can be outside of your control. And so they may now have greater trepidation and concern about privacy and confidentiality. That may not be reflected in their agreements, but people, I think, are much more sensitized now than they were before to this notion of having themselves exposed. Not just in the context of AI, but in the context of technology generally. So even if there isn't a contractual obligation for you to keep their information from being exposed, they're going to come into this relationship with a heightened aware about being exposed. And even if they're not contractually protected, um, don't don't think that you're not exposed. They'll still bring the suit if their stuff gets exposed. And there are general torts. There is case law that protect people's expectations of privacy, even when they're not reduced to a contractual writing. So, short answer is, yeah, you got more legal risk because it's not just your vault that's at issue now.
Got it. Now just thinking about this, let's say a firm is doing work for, let's say, a national brand that has national design standards that might be um, proprietary to them, right? Which is, quite common. And as architects, we get sort of a playbook on how we need to design your space. Um, and so, Rich, based off of what you're saying, there might already be rules before AI on what is confidential and what can be deemed public. Um, but based and I just want to clarify between the both of you guys, you know, probably not okay to drop that design standard into Chat GPT or Claude or, DeepSeek, right?
Oh,
That would be
no,
bad.
But is
I
there
would.
is there a conversation with the client that says, "Hey, look, we have an internal co-pilot that is secure that we rely on to parse through that information." Could there be a negotiation where that's okay?
I think that's going to be a discussion between the dueling IT components, both the clients and yours. If you're using Marcial's organization, he's going to be talking to the owner's IT managers to discuss their concerns and whether or not Marcial's structure can accommodate their concerns and protect their interests in the way they want them protected.
Yeah, and also I would add to that that it also you can say you can adhere to certain cybersecurity frameworks, right? And the frameworks then say, hey, we are up to this standard, and this is the software that we're using, and it's up to this standard. So if you're in a CIS standard or if you're in CMMC standard, there's different standards that you can use, and that's how you can sort of designate whether you're cyber secure or not, because now you are putting it against a cybersecurity framework.
Got it. Okay. So firms would have to almost like put it into a framework to give their clients some trust that, hey, like we want to leverage these tools to help us, do a better job for you. But here's the standards that we've, pretty much set in place to keep you protected.
Yeah, and there's ways that you can evidence that in terms of you can show what your cybersecurity posture is based upon a cybersecurity framework. So you can say, "Hey, I'm 100% compliant against the CIS framework. Here's our documentation saying that this is our cybersecurity posture. This is what we're using in terms of AI, and it's inside our Microsoft tenant that is completely adhering to that cybersecurity framework."
By the
Got
way,
it.
lawyers have to do the same thing. We work for large institutions, and they will give us standards with which we must comply. And we'll have our IT people discuss with their IT people exactly what the standards are, how we're meeting them, and they're going to look for all the certifications they expect to see for an organization that observes those standards. So it happens even for law firms, guys and gals.
Mm, got it. Now, I want to shift a little bit because, let's say, a team is working on a project and there's all types of information that is being generated because it's not just putting information into ChatGPT or Claude or some other tool or Copilot. There's a lot of other AI tools like tools that take meeting transcripts or things that auto-generate summaries or um, there there's almost like a new level of IP because we're at an age where we never you know, we never had a actual stenographer working at all these firms, right? To write everything down. But now, because of AI, we technically do. Everyone now has their own personal stenographer writing down every single meeting that's happening and collecting the conversations and the intellectual property. So this is sort of like a twofold question, right? Is this sort of like a new version of IP that firms can now say they own, right? Like, let's say they have years and years of meeting transcripts because AI's like kind of collected it. Is this sort of like a new level of IP that is, generated that firms now can own and collect and maybe generate new designs and insights for, whatever work they're doing?
Well, there are all sorts of intellectual property rights. Okay. The ones that most people know about are rights that go with copyright and then with patent. Okay. And there are sort of strict requirements, legal requirements that must be met in order for that material to be legally protected either as a copyright or as a patent. And let's limit it to copyright because that's the world in which most design professionals live. They're products of their effort, depending upon their meeting these requirements, can be copyrightable. Okay. Um, and what AI has done with these sort of electronic, stenographers is it's taken ideas and it's put them into a tangible means of expression so that now it is arguably copyrightable. And probably we should let's give everybody a very quick copyright primer, okay? For something to be copyrightable, it has to be more than an idea. It has to be an idea fixed in a tangible medium of expression. It has to be the product of human activity. It has to be human expression, and it has to be creative. It has to be something new. Okay. And it all has to go into a tangible form. All right. Now, if you want to go copyright your minutes, I don't know if that meets the creative quality, but it is an idea now in a fixed, tangible means of expression. It is the product of human thought and creativity. So maybe you could get your meeting minutes, copyrighted, but I wouldn't count on it. But it at least meets some of the basic requirements. Um, if you're talking about something that is generated in the office through AI, well, then whether it meets the requirements of copyrightability get particular to the case. All right. The general requirement for copyright protection, again, is human creativity. Okay. And the Copyright Office has already made very clear that prompts given to Chat GPT, prompts themselves are only ideas, they're not copyrightable. And the product from the AI is the product of AI and not humans, and it's not copyrightable.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so I'm going to show those who have screens. There's a publication from the Copyright Office. They did a great job issuing a three-part series on copyright and AI. Part two is about 40 pages long, and it discusses whether or not AI generated, AI aided material can be copyrightable. Okay. Um, what you'll read at the end of the day is that prompts themselves are not copyrightable, and the results of prompts that come purely from the AI machine are not copyrightable. There are circumstances under which the human input can be so precise that just maybe through the prompts and the constraints placed on the AI productivity, you might get something that is copyrightable. But at present, that doesn't seem to be the case because with most of these AI machines, the same prompt can produce different results almost every time, showing you that the human doesn't really control what comes out of the output.
Now, to so to frame this, right? So let's say so we know that based off of that document, um, anything that we put into our prompt isn't copyrightable because it's a product realistically of the AI tool, right? Um, but let's say I have a design team and we're all doing sort of like a virtual design charrette. We record the conversation. The Nothing's being generated from AI. It's really just recording all of our, discussions over a period of time and all the iterations that we've come up with and how we like to just think about design, right? Now, can we say that those conversations are now product of the firm? That, the firm owns those conversations and the transcripts and can use that to, inform future design.
When you say you own it, you have to really ask yourself, how is it protected in law? Okay. And it's either protected as a copyright or it's protected as a patentable idea. Um, you know, otherwise it's really not it's not really a property, right?
Okay.
It's a great idea. That's why you can create protections for it contractually, which, by the way, is why owners have in their agreements in most cases provisions that address the results of that kind of collaborative and collective, thinking process, and they protect it through contract. Okay, you should be protecting it within the firm with your policies and procedures manual, making clear that the firm considers it valuable and you are not to share it outside of the firm unless you get certain approvals from those who manage and operate the firm. I'll tell you just as a general matter, um, the production of designs and other copyrightable material within a firm is always deemed to be the product of the firm and not the individual or not the employee. Okay, unless it's a work for hire, and we're not going to get into the details of copyright. But generally speaking, if you're a draftsperson, you're an architect, you're someone working in the firm creating designs, the firm is deemed the author of that product, and that's the entity that can go and secure copyright protection. All right. But
Awesome.
in terms of just the general thoughts you have in a meeting, A firm in its policies and procedures manual should make it clear they consider that it's valuable property, its means of doing business, that it doesn't get shared. And I will tell you that vis-a-vis owners, generally speaking, the more sophisticated owners are going to have a provision in their contract that applies the same thoughts. We consider this valuable. You're not going to disclose it outside the group.
Got it. Now, Marcial, how, let's say a firm has figured out how to, you know, create these lines and boundaries for what is going to be deemed valuable, what do we own, and they've created a legitimate process for collecting this information. How do they protect? I mean, like, how do they store it? Like, where do they store it? Like every person's like, hey, man, I've done like millions of meetings at this company. Maybe I should grab the transcripts. Like, where do they store it?
I think that this is something that many organizations underestimate, because a lot of times these conversations that are being recorded, right? They're inadvertently capturing, could be capturing trade secrets, strategic decisions, sensitive information. Hey, we talked about a project that we did a year ago and we did X, Y, or Z, and that's now being recorded, right? And it's because, once you get into the heat of the moment where everybody's in that creative mode, people just start spewing ideas, not realizing what they may be disclosing, right? And now you have an AI listening to you. So I think that all those pieces of data now need to be classified as sensitive information. And you have to be able to store that data in a place where only the people who were at that meeting had access to it. So it's not shared publicly. Because a lot of times when you start putting AI into organizations, people tend to not realize how they configure that AI, so they somebody else in that organization can just search up inside of the AI, inside their AI, and all of a sudden come up with that meeting that they may not have been needing to be privy to, right? So you have to be able to understand how to classify that information, and be able to store that information in a place inside your computing environment that has the access controls, so people can have the permissions to be able to access that meeting or that data so they can continue to use it.
Got it. Now, Marcel, you work with organizations all the time. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing organizations make right now who are maybe using AI tools informally?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're seeing right now, and it's been around for years and years, and we called it shadow IT, and now it's shadow AI, right? And this is what happens when employees start using tools on their own without talking to their organization or getting them formally approved, and and if the computing environment is a mess, AI can dramatically accelerate that. Like it can just get extremely messy. Um, you know, if teams start discovering like new AI tools and they see how productive it is and they start using it immediately, the problem is that governance comes later and people don't want to talk about that right now. Um, I think the biggest mistake organizations are making right now is they're not vetting those AI tools. They're not understanding like what's it doing and where the data flow is coming from, right? Um, they're usually introduced really loosely into the environment, right? So there's no way for them to really understand how it's configured or how it's governed, who has what happens with the information, what it flows. Hey, I'm using this new AI agent that's so amazing, but they don't know that DeepSeek is the LLM that they're using, right, inside that agent, and that data is now going to DeepSeek, being processed there, coming back, and then giving them a tool. Or everybody's building all these new AI tools that are surrounded by all these different large language models, but they're not understanding where the data is flowing. And once data starts flowing to different areas, right, and started coming back, you are losing control as to where that sensitive data is. And if it's not truly classified as sensitive data, you shouldn't be using tools that are not approved by the organization to be able to do it. So I think that's the biggest mistake.
Let me bring up the jump on. It's a perfect segue. I'm going to bring up another document that I'd like people to look at. And I know you won't, but it's out there, and I'll feel good about having told you it's out there. So, the ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies, came up with a set of guidelines for the use and management of AI in design firms. And it is, in fact, titled Guidelines on the Use of AI by Design Professional Firms. And it's only about a 4 or 5 page document. It tells you, it gives you the ideas about a structure for how you use AI. And it starts with the idea of governance. You have to set up within your firm some sense of governance over not just the use of AI, but I would say all of your IT. Okay. But, and that governance committee, needs to set some policies. And those policies go to first of all, the use case. You know, what do you use? Who uses it? How do they use it? When do they use it? You got to talk about privacy safe. You have to have policies on privacy safeguards. You have to have a policy about where these different tools go. And what I tell all design firms is, as a general risk management rule, please don't let people use their personal devices for business. Okay. They should be the business's devices. Same goes for AI tools. If you're going to use them, they should be installed on the business's computers and the computers of people that you want to have that AI tool and who understand what the policies are for the use of that AI. These guidelines also talk about the point that Marcial just brought up, and that increasingly AI is being integrated into software and you don't realize it. So the AI is at work behind the scenes and you don't know it. Okay. And so you really need to investigate the tools you're using and the software you're using and understand what it's then relying upon and where it's going at the end of the day. Um, they discuss as well this idea of copyrightability. You have to keep in mind that, you know, when you start publishing your designs, when you start producing what is copyrightable material, where you let it go and how you let it go can affect whether or not it will be copyrightable. You can waive copyrights, okay, by publishing it without previously copywriting the material. Um, it talks about some of the other issues we discussed earlier about how do you secure that information from being disclosed to third parties, whether you have a closed system or an open system. And if you have an open system, securing those rights, buying that level of product, which permits your provided material from going outside of your control. So I would strongly suggest to all of you, you go take a look at the ACEC guidelines to help you begin to create the framework and understanding that Marcial was just discussing. It's a great little outline for you. It's only 4 or 5 pages. You'll be able to understand it. Promise.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll after this we'll provide a link to where you guys can grab that resource. And I want to sort of just clarify one thing that Marcial and Rich just brought up. So outside of the main chatbots, which there are, I think there's Perplexity, there's OpenAI, there's Anthropic, and maybe there's one more, DeepSeek, I think you mentioned, right? But then there's sort of like an ocean of other AI tools, ones that do meeting transcripts, ones that you can do all types of stuff. And one thing I just want to clarify that, in the building of the, like, when the developers are creating these tools on the back end, they get to choose which AI company sort of feeds the information through, and they can either run it through one or multiple. So you might you might ask it a question and it's actually using DeepSeek in the background, or maybe it's using Anthropic. You have no idea. So, um, so my question for Marcial is, um, which is one is probably the reason why, like, you should probably keep all this on a closed network if you can. But how do you vet, when it's like sort of the wild, wild west, which it is right now, like how do you vet which tool to, should be safe to use within your organization?
Well, Yeah, understanding you have to be able to vet the tool and understand its inner workings in terms of how it works. And typically, you have to see whether it's relying on public AI or is it using its own internal kind of AI? And what are the enterprise controls that it has? So mostly mature AI products and tools have those, but the ones that are just startups and they're literally like you said before, there's thousands and thousands of AI tools being generated on a daily basis. Um, if you don't believe me, go to a place called there's an AI for that.com and you will see 1,000 tools a day that come out. I do not recommend you use that in your organization, but it is there. And so these tools are coming out and it's becoming, I think that the biggest one that came out very recently was OpenClaw. And that really is like, you know, talk about playing with matches right there where you it's agentic in nature and it can literally just go through your entire deed and start pulling things without you even knowing it. So there're just things that are out there that you should not be using, and you should lean on your IT professionals to be able to take a look at it, and they're going to look at it from a security and standards and policy guidelines framework. And if it doesn't meet those, then it's going to get recommended to not get approved. And so I always say that the first thing that every single organization should do, because they don't know, is get visibility on what's happening and what applications are being used and how that data was before. I mean, back in the good old days where it was just, inside of a network and all your data stood on a server behind a firewall and it was nicely there like in a castle with a moat around it. That's what it used to look like. Nowadays, data is like Swiss cheese all over the place. It literally is, and everybody's just trying to put it, but there are ways to be able to do this safely. It's just you have to be able to govern the IT applications and have it looked at and see what can be classified as approved applications and allowed by the organization on their business computers, right, that they're using. And this way they can actually start using those computers and do it in a safe way. Because the idea is that we don't want to hamper the experimentation of using AI because there's something to that as well. But when it starts to get seriously like, hey, I just saw this tool that's, it's called RFP, RFP Zoom, and I upload my RFP and it's gonna put all that data and give me the best request so I can win that proposal. And you have no idea where that data is going, and you have no idea where that is. And a lot of people try to go to use these AI tools because they want to, look productive, look more professional, and start doing all those things. But the leadership really has to kind of take a look at and say, hey, this needs to be, put into our policy. This is what you can use. This is what you cannot use. These are the reasons why. And this way it protects the organization so the organization can grow. And in my view, and in my opinion, I think that cybersecurity standards are going to be what's going to differentiate what the risks are in terms of bringing in those organizations as vendors inside their supply chain.
Got it. Now, and uh, let's say if I am either a department head or firm principal or owner or maybe I run operations, and my day to day is sort of busy as it is, especially with the sea of tools that are coming out. What are like, should I know? Like, should I, my team might be using these AI tools, but I'm still afraid of it. Should I, like, what are the minimum that I should know and at least try to understand? And that's a question for maybe both of you guys. Well,
Look, you got it. Your state of ignorance is not healthy. Okay. All right. You need to know. This doesn't just apply, of course, to AI. I would say this applies to how what resources your people generally use and how they use them in conducting your business. Going back to whose devices are they using, and how are they communicating business information and engaging in your business. You need to inquire of each of your employees what tools, especially what AI tools they are using to get the job done. And then you need to sit down with someone like Marcial or your other IT vendors and start talking about policies and procedures, the tools that are being used, how they should be used. Go look at the ACEC guidelines, form some policies, and start to implement them and educate your people about them.
So here's what I say because I think that there everybody's busy and they don't, nobody wants to have a conversation about what they're using and what they're not using. But if your IT is being managed by a provider or your IT team is there, they do have the capability to be able to see what is being used and what is considered to be approved applications versus unapproved applications. There is metadata that you can get from an environment to allow you to know if they're using the application on the desktop or if they're using any cloud applications that are there. And as these applications come up, you can even categorize them even further. Are these AI tools or not? And then once you start realizing and getting the visibility of what the organization is using and who is using them, it's not in terms of Big Brother where you're seeing exactly what they're doing and what they're typing in, but you get to see what the actual use is. So you'll know if, out of an organization of 50 to 100 different employees, if 25 or 30 employees are using OpenAI versus 20 or 30 other employees maybe using DeepSeek, right? And you're like, oh my God, I don't want any of my employees using DeepSeek. And then that's something that the IT provider can then start filtering and sort of denying access to those applications. So having visibility is literally job number one. To just get identify what's going on, what's happening, who's using what and where, and then start saying, okay, what is acceptable to the organization? What is it not acceptable to the organization? If it is acceptable to the organization, what are the policies that we need to put around it? What are the guardrails that we're going to have to start putting around it so they can start using it? So I think that's the number one thing.
Some of this should already be in your policies and procedures manual if you're an employer. Your lawyers drafting those will usually address just not necessarily AI, but address, some of the fundamentals about how your employees get their work done and the tools they use. Keep that in mind. You can usually turn to an employee who has some question about this new level of monitoring, say, look, it's part of our policies and procedures. We have a right to know how you're prosecuting the work of the firm. And when it comes to AI, we're probably going to add a few additional policies to that book to protect the firm.
Is there, if I'm a small organization, does this apply to me? Like, let's say I'm like 5, 10 people, or maybe 20, maybe less than 20. Does this apply to me? Should I, are are we too small? Or like maybe we should just be Wild West until we get huge?
That's a rhetorical question, right? Because does it proceed from the premise that only large firms get into trouble, only large firms get sued? Some of my biggest cases come from my smallest firms. So,
Yeah, I would have to agree with Richard there. You're not too small at all. I mean, your clients are probably bigger than you, right? And you're dealing with their data. So I would say that you have to match that, and that's the thing today. Like you have to be able to. It's available. You can get enterprise level tools and enterprise level protection to be able for you to compete on a level playing ground with these other bigger firms. But you just have to care enough to do it, and you have to make it an initiative.
So it sounds like, as a firm leader, one of the first things that, you would want to do is one, have a conversation and ask, hey, what are you guys using? And then two, run that through IT to see what they're actually using. Um, start the conversation of putting some policies in place. is there anything else that you would recommend that, leaders should do next to, manage AI or manage AI responsibly for their organizations?
I I'll start again with getting policies and governance into place. You absolutely have to have policies and you have to have a governance system for implementing and enforcing the policies and educating your employees about those policies. That's where I would start. I mean, I'm sure there's much more that they could do, and Marcial could tell you all that much more to do. But I know if you're design professionals out there, I know you. And unless you're in a very large, sophisticated firm, I'm betting you don't have policies generally on how your work gets done. You might not, you may not even have a procedures and policies manual for employees. You should get one, but you better focus on having policies about the use of AI and have a governance system for implementing them, enforcing them, and educating your employees about them.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm gonna stick with first things first, get the visibility. There are ways to be able to find out how your Microsoft tenant is configured. Are you adhering to certain cybersecurity standards? It's all public data. If you want to go, into NIST, um, they put out public data on how to, do just simple cybersecurity frameworks that'll help you give you that sort of, okay, what are the governance that I need to do? Because if you just don't know what to do, there are ways to be able to find out. And I think the next biggest thing is start learning how to classify your data, especially when you start using all these different AI tools. And then once you understand how to classify your data, then it's access control. Who is going to be accessing that data and making sure that those people have the correct permissions. And it's not just out there on the network that anybody else can pick up, because if anybody else can pick it up, not only can you pick it up, but other AI agents can pick it up. And if they and you don't know when after that, that data is all over the place. So I don't think that AI is not really the risk. I think the risk is using AI without visibility, governance, and control over your data.
Mm,
That's it.
that's a nice mic drop. Guys, this has been an incredible conversation. We have a couple minutes left. I just want to, so if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. There is one that just came in. So, is an AI generated conversation like a note taker have any precedent on how it could be used in litigation? So let's say a client says something during a video call and AI picks that up in the summary. Does it hold any weight legally down the road?
Okay. So, this is the first thing I thought of is if you are going to have a note taker, you must have a proofread. I've yet to see any note taker come out and perfectly capture the communications that were had. But if you're sued, if there's a claim against you and they seek information about the subject of the claim, and that conversation is within the subject of the claim, through a process called discovery, they get to see it. You don't get to hold it back. Okay. There's no protection that keeps you from having to produce that conversation and getting those notes. You will have to turn them over. What weight will it have? Well, if you're talking and the notes are recording what you're saying, they're your words. And as the old dragnet line went, what you say can be used against you in a court of law. So what weight does it carry? It carries the weight of anything else you say that can be evidenced in a court, whether it be a a conversation that's taken and summarized digitally, or a note you actually write on a piece of paper, or a letter you actually write. Okay, it's considered an admission, so you better make sure that that note taker has accurately captured what was said, and if it wasn't, you can edit it. Go ahead and edit it. Don't let that be the official record. And then you can produce the edited version. You'll have to produce the unedited version, but then you can produce the edited version. So, yes, it can be used in a court of law.
Awesome. All right. Guys, this has been a amazing conversation. Guys, if there's no other questions, we'll end a little early. Oh, one more. There's one more coming in. All right. All right. One second. We got one question in the queue. All right. So, what is the first reference guide noted by Rich Davies? So, Rich, there was there was another reference guide that you noted.
Right. There are two I noted. It's a publication from the Copyright Office. It is actually a three-part document. It's sort of three chapters of a book on copyrightability and AI. It is free. Just search the Copyright Office for their publications on AI. It was, as I said, published in three parts. The first part was published in July of 2024, talking about digital replicas. Second part was published in January 2025. That's what I cited to. It's called Copyright and Artificial Intelligence, Copyrightability. And then the third part is Generative AI Training, all available at the United States Copyright Office. The second reference was the American Council of Engineering Companies guidelines on the use of AI. I clipped it and sent it to Uchenna. So,
Yep.
first of all, just type in ACEC guidelines on the use of AIA, use of artificial intelligence, and it'll pop up. But if you have trouble doing that, Uchenna now has the link and we'll send it to you.
Yeah, yeah, and everyone we'll make sure we circulate those two references to everyone who is in this webinar. So you guys will get that plus the recording. Any other questions? All right. Well, looks like we're actually at time. So, guys, thank you so much for spending time with me today, and sort of answering these like really hot topics for how everyone wants to use AI and giving us a playbook on how to do it responsibly. So, with that, we'll thanks to everyone for joining our webinar today, and have a great afternoon. See you all.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
All right.